because we don't have any measuring equipment to find out. Okay? So you can imagine the reaction of these Argentine scientists. They think they're dealing with a nut, with an incompetent, and they report all this to Perón. And Perón shuts the project down, and he places Richter under house arrest in Buenos Aires. Okay? Now, this is the same Richter that 4 years later, the American Air Force, after the American press has roundly denounced the guy as a fraud and a crank and a swindler, goes down to Argentina and covertly contacts him and interviews him on just exactly what was he doing in this project. And here's the answer, and it's a whopper. Richter proceeds to tell his American interrogators, and I've got his paperclip file, I reproduce it in the book. He proceeds to tell them, well, I believe that you can set up a process of controlled nuclear fusion by examining and setting up shock waves within a rotating and precessing plasma, okay? And he goes on to say that it's my belief, based on experiments that I did in Nazi Germany beginning in 1936, that this kind of plasma with a precessional wobble, so to speak, in it, is actually a way of tapping into the 0-point energy. Okay? And that's the cat out of the bag, because what Richter was doing, the whole principle of the physics which so baffled his Argentine interrogators, was he really wasn't trying to investigate thermonuclear fusion at all. It was simply kind of a means to an end for him. Now, the really interesting thing, Bill, and the thing that ties this to the bell and ties it very directly, is that when Richter worked in Nazi Germany, during one period of his research in 1943, he worked for the German firm of Allgemeine Elektrizitätsgesellschaft, which is kind of their General Electricity. And he was working on a project codenamed Karite Anlage, which was a project ostensibly to investigate ball lightning and plasmas, okay? But here's the key. That project codename is the project codename for the power plant to the Bell device, okay? So in other words, this scientist was directly connected with the Nazi Bell project. And if you examine the Bell project, it's my belief that one of the key physics ingredients, so to speak, of this technology was precisely counter-rotating plasmas that were very sharply and very severely pulsed electrically, all right? So you have kind of the physics signatures of this project showing up again with Richter. And incidentally, the other interesting thing is it's that same German firm, AEG, that built the equipment that Richter was using in Argentina, okay? So if you put it all together, what I think you have in this project in Argentina is simply a continuation of the Bell project. And when Perón inadvertently spills the beans, Richter is quite literally, in my opinion, probably ordered to shut the project down and make him and it look completely fraudulent by this very bizarre, weird behavior that he demonstrates to the Argentine scientists. And after the project shut down, of course, the Nazis are going to take it and move it somewhere else. And I haven't been able to figure out or find out where they moved it to. But the point is that they kept their hands on this technology and made very sure that it wasn't going to get into anybody else's hands. And I think this is the real reason that America, at the same time that it's shutting down open literature discussion of anti-gravity technology, decides, well, we better go down there and talk to this Richter character, find out exactly what he was up to. And when they find out, they find out he's really working in 0-point energy and all sorts of very exotic things. And, one fellow that I saw in his documents in his paperclip file, and I reproduced this in the book, one American scientist was of the opinion that this guy's not a fraud or a swindler at all. He's some sort of mad genius working in the 1970s. So, once again, we're confronted with this nasty fact that you've got a bunch of exotic technology in the hands of all these Nazis after the war.
Mm-hmm. So the Nazis, probably during the war here, purchased 10,000 square miles of Argentine land. Right. They set up probably factories or laboratories or something there. Mm-hmm. And they have a fortune and wealth.
Right.
Along with it, and then they pack up this the Bell project and ship it there.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I think is going on, because again, the signatures of the physics are almost identical with what Richter is dealing with in Nazi Germany, what the Bell project was in Nazi Germany, and what he's doing after the war. And you've got that very peculiar corporate connection, the same corporation that was involved in constructing part of the technology of the Bell device is supplying Richter his equipment in Argentina. And the really interesting thing, Bill, is if you examine Richter's paperclip file, he comes right out and he tells the American interrogators very directly and very explicitly that when his project was shut down, the Argentines recovered none of the data and none of the measuring equipment. And that's the key there, because it's very obvious with that what he was doing for the Argentine scientists was essentially a show. It was a show that was designed to shut this down and make it look ridiculous in world opinion, and he was certainly successful in that.
Now, let's take a look at the at this Bell device.
Sure.
Now, you're mentioning that it has. You think it uses this plasma, and it's configured, maybe contained within a vessel or something, some sort of maybe a spinning disc, and it's a counter-rotating system.
Right. Yes. Well, the physics of the Bell is very difficult to reconstruct, because what we're relying on is the affidavit of an SS general that was tried in a Polish war crimes tribunal after the end of the war. This was the SS general that was tasked to murder 60 of the scientists that were involved with the Bell project, and that's the key right there, that the Nazis are intent on making sure that neither the Soviets nor the Allies find out anything significant about it, okay? So we have to reconstruct from the little, and this man, I should stress, is not a scientist. He's simply recording his recollections and memories of what this project was for the Polish court. So you have to kind of pay attention to the details he gives you, and on that basis kind of reconstruct a speculative case of what the physics was that they were investigating. But in a nutshell, the Bell was a device that stood about 15 to 18 feet tall, about 9 to 12 feet wide. It was bell-shaped, and around the kind of rim of the Bell device, there were these heavy-duty, high-voltage electrical cable portals, okay? On the inside of this device, they had two counter-rotating cylinders. Now, I should stress something. It is not clear from his affidavit what the configuration of those cylinders was. Were they one inside the other, or were they stacked one on top of the other? It's my belief, and I kind of outline the case in my book, Secrets of the Unified Field, that these two systems, counter-rotating cylinders, were stacked one on top of the other rather than one inside the other, okay? Into these cylinders that were spun up to extraordinarily high mechanical speed, they put a serum which they had codenamed Serum 525. And in Sporenberg's description, this substance was a very heavy, high-density liquid that was kind of a reddish-maroon color, okay? Now, it's known from the researches of my colleague Igor Vitkovsky that probably one of the substances involved in this serum, whatever it was probably mercury, some isotope of mercury. And it's also known that some of the other ingredients were bismuth, barium, and thorium. Now, thorium is interesting to me, Bill, because when the Allies went into Nazi Germany at the end of the war, one of the most perplexing things that they simply could not figure out on the basis of the physics that they knew was why the Nazis were so concerned with stockpiling massive amounts of thorium. And I think, and my speculation is that if they had laser enrichment technology, which we've argued in the first hour, they would have been using this this probably to separate thorium-229 isomer out of the thorium stockpiles that they had amassed, because thorium isomer is a high-spin state isotope of thorium that has a very low de-excitation